Hello and welcome back everyone. Today I'll start covering the first of the full-sized Malifaux-sided allegiances, the Gibbering Hordes. Don't forget that in addition to everything I'm covering here, they also have access to all of the generic Malifaux assets and stratagems. Their allegiance card is full of personality that really sells who the Gibbering Hordes are, especially in the first ability, Endless Numbers. This lets you, at the start of each turn, summon back any squads that were killed in the last turn, costing 1 tactics token per squad. They come in on a table edge in your deployment zone with a reinforcement token, and get to immediately move twice their speed up the board to get back into the action. Conveniently, the start of turn step comes after you gain the turn's tactics tokens, so you'll always be able to summon back a handful of squads with this if you want to. It's important to note that while the wording implies it's the same squads, they're not. They're brand new ones, so any adjuncts or tokens that were on the killed unit are not transferred over. This means that the generic Malifaux adjunct, the icon of the first world, has less value here generally, since most of your squads are kind of expected to regularly die and be replaced. Remember that summoned units always come in with just 1 fire team at a full model count. Tide pools let you place 2 120mm concealing low and difficult terrain pieces of the same name in the scouting step. They can be put anywhere on the board except in either deployment zone. Note that these are not markers. Aquatic lets Hordes units ignore the difficult part of the tide pools. This gives you all of the benefits of the tide pools without their normal downsides. Lastly, their glory mechanic is survival of the fittest. This lets them go to glory by eating their friends. When you activate a Hordes unit, you can kill any nearby friendly fire team to flip to glory. You can also use this tactically, killing off injured units to bring them back in next turn at a better spot with endless numbers. Plus, there's nothing saying you can't use this while you're already in glory, so it's always available to you. The last line is important too, since in most operations, having a commander die gives your enemy VP, but the Hordes can eat a commander that's in danger to deny this. It's an act of desperation though, since now you're down a commander, which is a huge loss. If the part of the allegiance card you found the most interesting was the tide pools, then you're going to love the Stormsiren. Her AVs are pretty average for a commander, but with the very rare tactics value of 3. Her ability Standing Water gives you a 3rd tide pool to put on the board in the scouting step, making more of the board hostile to your opponent right from the start. The ability is only on the front of her card, since it only matters for setting up the game. Her melee action, Grasping Tentacles, has a good AV and strength, and if the enemy's touching a tide pool, it goes up to an amazing strength 5. In Glory, it also gets a trigger to give a nearby friendly unit the reinforcement token. What you'll be using most of the time, though, is her morale action, Siren's Call. This has a fantastic AV and range, forcing the enemy to move at speed towards either her or one of your tide pools. Remember that if she targets a squad, the rest of the unit moves half that distance, and they need to end fully in cohesion. In Glory, this gets 2 triggers. The first lets you spend your margin to boost the movement, 2 margin per inch. The second is built in and makes it so if she's targeting a squad, that all of its fire teams move the full distance. It's really important to know how this movement works. First, the movement has to be in a straight line, center of object to center of object, and if there's anything even slightly in the way, it stops there, as our silly little egg clutch on the left shows off. Second, if you have the target go towards a tide pool, there's a specific point that the fire teams stop at. That point is where the exact center of the fire team is over the exact center of the tide pool. Even if the fire team had more movement it could theoretically take, it doesn't move past that point. Thankfully, you at least choose the order of which fire teams move if there's more than one, so you can try and squeeze as many into base contact with the tide pool as possible. So on the right, you can see the Stormsiren chooses to move the middle fire team first, since if the left or right ones moved first, then you probably couldn't get both of the others touching that tide pool. So difficult terrain is a little annoying for your opponent, but their true power comes when she flips to glory. Her new ability, Lurking in the Depths, gives your tide pools Hazardous 3 that only affects the enemy. Those Siren's Calls are looking way more threatening now. Since hazardous terrain auto-hits and happens once per activation, she can move a squad into base contact with the tide pool, blasting them all with unavoidable damage for moving in hazardous. Then when they activate, they get blasted by hazardous again. With decent penetration flips, she can wipe out entire squads with this. Lastly, she also gets a new magic morale action in Glory. Endless Rain lets you create more tide pools within a huge range to make even more of the map into a nightmare hellscape for your opponent. Her personal asset, the Conch Horn, is pricey at 2 scrip and gives 2 abilities that only get pricier. Whispers from Meridian lets her spend any number of tactics tokens to prevent any damage she would take, 1 token per damage. It gets extremely expensive fast, but being able to theoretically never die is pretty impressive. From the Depths upgrades the Horde's Endless Numbers ability, letting the summoned squads show up in a tide pool instead of your deployment zone at the cost of a 2nd tactics token per squad. Both of these abilities get very expensive very fast, but when used at the right time, are very valuable. The Frenzy are a really interesting commander. They mix things up by being the only commander currently that are a squad, being 3 50mm fire teams with 1 model each. Since they're a squad, you can use up one of their 2 asset slots to attach the icon of the first world to them as well if you want a 4th fire team. They also only have a tactics value of 1 normally, but it goes up to the standard of 2 when you go to Glory. Remember that survival of the fittest happens before gaining tactics tokens, so if they eat something, they'll gain 2 tactics tokens that activation. Their defensive AVs are a bit low for a commander, but since they can reinforce their fire teams back, that's very understandable. The Frenzy's general theme is an overwhelming number of attacks, and their ability Blood in the Water really helps with that. This lets you discard a reinforcement token after a melee action to take it again. This is actually a major rules as written versus rules as intended problem point. While the rulebook says that additional actions can't create more additional actions generally, Danny O'Don on Discord pointed out to me that there's a rules as written interpretation that allows for infinite additional attacks from this, since they're coming from an ability, not an action or a trigger. This is something that hopefully gets resolved with the next FAQ or errata. Speaking of attacking, their melee action Sharp Claws is fantastic. Its AV and Strength are both great, and has a trigger to place their target into base contact with a squad mate to keep the pain train rolling. Throwing your opponent into some hazardous terrain is dirty and effective. In Glory, it gets 2 more triggers, one for a reinforcement token and the other for piercing. Before they make it to the front lines, they can also speed up huge chunks of your company with their morale action Nipping at their heels. This moves all nearby non-commanders 3 inches in any direction, then all of this unit moves 3 inches too. In Glory, this gets a big AV boost of 2, and a trigger to have one of the Frenzy take a melee action after. If you have them each take this action, plus the 1 free morale action for being a commander, you can shove a huge chunk of your company 12 inches up the board with this. Lastly, in Glory they get a new ability, Prove Your Worth. This lets their fire teams that are reinforced back immediately take a melee action. And yes, this does mean you can start killing your opponent in the start phase of the turn. You can even pair this with Blood in the Water for a ton of attacks before any actual activations happen. Their personal asset is absolutely fantastic for them, giving 2 great abilities. Now, as soon as you hear their 3 single-model fire teams, you're probably thinking, oh, so use area attacks against them. Well, the first ability, Evasive, makes them immune to it. Their second, Gang Up, makes them even better at killing when they stay close to each other. As long as they're within 3 inches of a squad mate, they get to flip 2 cards and choose which one to use in every one of their actions duels. If they're within range of 2 squad mates, they get a free suit. Attaching the icon of the first world makes these both much easier to pull off. The first of their dual allegiance commanders, Horomatangi, keeps the Commanders with an Unusual Special Unit rules train rolling by being a commander who's a Titan. This means he can equip 3 assets, which is a huge deal, but at a terrible cost. He's also the only commander currently who is not a champion, so he cannot pass off damage to his friends. He also only brings 22 script instead of the normal 25. Like most Titans, he comes in on a 120mm base, has low defense, but he has the highest armor in the game when he's in Glory. His first ability, Cloud of Steam, gives you a great passive threat. This auto-hits any enemy fire teams that make the mistake of ending their activation near him for Strength 2 that can't be cheated. All of his actions are really solid too. His melee action, Superheated Claws, has the normal Titan melee range of 3 inches, is Strength 4 with piercing, and always destroys any assets it damages. In Glory, it gets 2 triggers, one giving Accurate and the other to give a Shaken token. The Accurate is especially terrifying for any enemy commanders he can get in range of. His missile action, Scalding Spurt, has a subpar AV for a commander, but it has decent range, a good strength, and built-in area. His morale action, Bellow of Command, is absolutely fantastic. This has a solid range and can target friends or enemies, giving them any 2 tokens of your choice. This lets you pump out reinforcement or inspire tokens, or sabotage your opponents. One thing that is very noteworthy about this action is that unlike most gain a token style actions, this one does not have the accept tactics tokens line. So, you can spend your actions for 4 extra tactics tokens if you'd like. In Glory, he gets a new ability and action. The ability, the Tactics of Burning Rage, gives you a tactics token every time he kills a fire team. His Glory-only morale action, Mighty Willpower, is one of the strongest in the game, but it can only be taken once per activation. This just lets you take any other action on his card, and has a trigger to also take an action on one of his assets. This means that if you're in melee range of an enemy, you can use Superheated Claws, then Mighty Willpower to use Superheated Claws again, and then also take one of his asset actions. This gets even better if you give him any assets with versatile actions, which, spoiler, he has several of. This is why the asset Relics of Ancient Malifaux is very valuable on him, as he can use it to support your units while also murdering his enemies. Speaking of actions on assets, his personal one for the Gibbering Hordes, Tidecaller, has 2 versatile magic actions. Since they're versatile, you can always take one of them for free, but you can't use the same action twice per activation. So you can take one of them as the versatile action, and then take the other either as the action from your order or with Mighty Willpower's trigger. The first of these actions is Incoming Tide, doing a duel against every enemy in 6 inches to pull them 3 inches towards him, which is enough to get them into his engagement range if there's nothing in the way to block them. What a coincidence. It also has a trigger to increase the distance they move to 5 inches. They'll also be in range of the asset's other action, Tidal Wave, which does a duel against all enemies in 3 inches. This is a Strength 3 and gives out a Shaken token to every fireteam hit. Since he's dual allegiance with the cult, he lets you take the envoys from the cult. In addition to letting you equip cult assets on him and hire their squads, he also directly benefits from 2 abilities. The first, Cultists, gives him a second way to get to glory, flipping if he ever has 2 Shaken tokens on him. It's very important to note that you don't discard the Shaken tokens when you flip to glory, they stay on you. You'll probably want to eat an ally to not have those tokens on him, but more options is always better. The other ability, Portals, is basically the same as the cult's Dimensional Instability ability. See my video covering exactly how that works in the card above, but it's significantly less good here since you don't get any portal markers to place. So you'll only benefit from this if you hire in some stalking portals. His personal asset in the cult, Flaming Breath, gives you yet another versatile action, this one melee. Exhale Flames has a good AV in strength, a trigger to get rid of all of the target's reinforcement tokens, and a built-in trigger to gain area if you want it. Remember that the attacker is never affected by their own area damage. Overall, since he has 3 asset slots, he's really flexible in the kind of commander you want to build him to be. You can play him super aggressive with his personal assets and Uncanny Instincts, or make him more support-based with Relics of Ancient Malifaux and some others. The Hordes' last commander is Kawatora, who is dual allegiance with the Kimon. He isn't the smartest turtle in the sea, only coming in with a tactics value of 1. He comes in on a 50 mil base, and his speed and willpower aren't that impressive, but his defense and armor are good, and have ways of getting even better. His ability Challenge is great for team support. It prevents enemies from cheating in any duels for actions that target himself or his friends within 8 inches. The enemy has to have line of sight to Kawatora though, so he really wants to be up on the front lines. While he's up at the front, he can use his melee action Wrestle. This has a good AV, a great Strength 4, and gives the target a whopping 2 pin tokens. He also has the magic morale action, River's Medicine, which is a bit short range, but lets the target reinforce. Massively, it also lets them discard any token when reinforcing instead of a reinforcement token. Being able to cleanse a Shaken or Pin token and reinforce from it is great. In Glory, this also has 2 triggers which help out a lot. The first immediately gives a reinforcement token, helping out units without any tokens on them, and the second attaches the toughness asset to the unit instead of reinforcing normally. Remember that a unit can only attach assets in-game that they could legally attach when making your company, so you cannot use this to go over the asset cap or to give it to a squad. While in Glory, he gets a strong personal defense ability, Patience. This boosts all of his AVs by 2 until he activates that turn. This spikes his defense to 8, willpower to 7, and armor to 12. His personal asset for the Hordes is simple but valuable. River Demon turns his engagement range into a mobile tide pool. This naturally makes him and the Stormsiren into very dear friends, making the board even more terrifying. Stormsiren making his engagement range hazardous 3 for your opponents, or her Conch Horn letting your squads come back with endless numbers right beside him are both super valuable. Since he's dual allegiance Kimon, if you take him, then you can also take the envoys from Kimon. This lets him attach Kimon assets, hire Kimon squads, and personally benefit from 2 abilities on their envoy card. Prolonged War lets you flip a single Kimon unit, including Kawatora, to glory at the start of every turn. You should probably not flip Kawatora to glory this way, since he can eat an ally to flip to glory, and your other Kimon units can't. The other envoy ability is Channel the Beyond, which lets him take his personal gate asset, Sapphire Gate. Like all Command commanders, this gives him the morale action Call to War, letting him flip his Kimon units out of glory to summon in new units based on how much glory you spend. Spending 2 glories gets you the Kimon unit Papa Akaname, and 3 gives you the Horde squad Armored Whelks. Remember that all summoned units always come in on a single fireteam with a full model count. I'll be covering the Armored Whelks and Hordes as part 2, but just so you know what the Papa Akaname does, I've put the card on screen now. Generally, they're nuisance line cloggers that punish the enemy for attacking them in melee. His other personal Kimon asset is Ancient Kappa, which gives him 2 nice abilities. Bulwark gives nearby friends a reinforcement token every time they flip to glory, including himself. The Hordes have several units that use reinforcement tokens for AV boosts and other benefits, and they adore having this happen. Lastly, Hulking Fighter gives him the engagement range of a Titan, 3 inches. This also pairs up amazingly well with its Hordes asset River Demon, making a truly huge mobile tide pool around him. Just to give you an idea of the scale of these assets, here we can see the size of the normal and extended engagement ranges besides the normal tide pool. While this normal engagement range makes a tide pool that's around the same diameter, when extended it becomes massive. You also have access to the 2 generic Hordes Commander assets. The unique one, Kill Trophies, gives you just the one ability, giving you an extra VP if this unit gets the killing blow on an enemy commander. Potentially very valuable if you're playing very aggressive with your commander, but a little situational. The other commander asset, Tidal Scepter, costs 2 script for 2 abilities. The first, Master of the Waves, lets you pretend that you're playing the cult. It lets your units teleport between tide pools, but only when they start their activation touching one. Conveniently, Kawatora and his personal asset River Demon makes this not too difficult to pull off. The second ability is Creeping Ever Closer. This lets your company deploy 3 inches past your deployment zone for every copy of this asset that you take. This is only during deployment though, and it does not increase your deployment zone size in any other way. They also have a champion asset, which the Stormsiren, the Frenzy, and Kawatora can take. Sorry Horomatangi, but not you. This gives the unit an ability to draw a card every time they kill an enemy fire team, and if they kill a Titan, they draw a second card. On the Frenzy, this can get you a ton of cards. Well, that's enough about the commanders. Let's move on to the hireable units. First off is the Hordes' Titan, the Alpha Crawler. As usual for Titans, it's 7 script for a 120 mil fire team with a single model. It has good speed and armor, but awful defense and willpower. Its only ability, ridden by crawlers, gives them a massive survivability boost. You can spend any number of their reinforcement tokens to block incoming damage, 1 damage per token. If you're feeding them reinforcement tokens, then this becomes an extremely durable centerpiece to your company. Its melee action, Gruesome Maw, has a decent AV and strength and the usual Titan melee range of 3 inches. It also has a trigger to get +2 AV per reinforcement token on them, which makes this extremely likely to hit with a little support. It gets another trigger in Glory to spend a reinforcement token to attack again, too. In Glory, it also gets a missile action, Fling Crawler, to throw one of its little friends on his back at the enemy. Its AV, range, and strength are only okay, but it doesn't have to discard a card to shoot into engagements. It also has 2 triggers. The first, Screaming All the Way, gives the target and all fire teams between you and it a shaken token. The other, It Lived, gives a fire team engaging the target a reinforcement token. I love the thematic elements of this. The first of its asset slots to choose for is the Arms, both giving a versatile melee action. Massive Arms gives you Crushing Hands, which has good AV and a great Strength 5. It also has a trigger to give you half of accurate, only preventing champions from passing off the damage, but not letting you snipe out adjuncts. Multi-Limbed gives the action Clawed Hands. This also has a decent AV, but only Strength 3. However, it lets you lean even harder into the Hoarding Reinforcement Tokens playstyle, giving you a trigger to spend one to attack again, just like with his basic melee action in Glory. The second asset slot to look at is for the Body, this time both giving you a versatile missile action. Ridden by Crawlers gives you Thrown Spears, which has an okay AV, range, and strength, but has the trigger Blacken the Sky to get +1 strength per reinforcement token on you with no cap. In theory, this can have the highest strength in the game. The alternative, Roiling Innards, lets you use Projectile Vomit. It has a good AV, but a quite short range of 8 inches and only strength 2. The real power of the action, though, is that it forces the target out of Glory. Plus it has a trigger to get rid of all of the target's reinforcement tokens. As with all flip from Glory effects, against certain allegiances this is devastating. Lastly, you get to choose what you want for its legs. Overeager gives you the ability Furious Charge, giving it +2 to all AVs during its activation if it takes the rush order. This does include speed, and is not just during duels, so it does boost your movement distance as well. Powerful Legs gives you a morale action, Running Leap. This teleports you within 6 inches, not in base contact with anyone else, and then you get to take a free melee action. Remember that this is not versatile, so it's an exchange for your normal action, which is probably why it gives you a free attack. In summary, the Alpha Crawler can be one of the most terrifying units in the game if you feed it a ton of support and reinforcement tokens, or you can use it as more of a large harassment and disruption piece. Now let's talk about the Hordes' unit without special unit rules. Unlike every other full-size allegiance which has 6 squads and 2 units without special unit rules, the Hordes has 7 and 1 respectively. Their only one of these is the Devouring Eel, which has 3 script for one 50 mm fire team with 1 model. Its speed and defensive AVs are incredible, especially defense 7, which goes up to 8 in glory, making this thing stunningly hard to kill. Speaking of hard to kill, its ability Regeneration gives them a free reinforcement token in the upkeep step, and lets them spend a reinforcement token when they take damage to reduce that damage by 1. They only have one action, their melee action Constrict. This has a good AV and a solid Strength 3 and Piercing. Plus, as long as it kills one or more models, it gains a reinforcement token. It also has a trigger Consume, which has the extremely rare effect of doing direct damage. As long as this action dealt any damage at all, the trigger deals just 1 more. This even becomes built in when in glory. The trigger's damage is a separate source of damage, which matters a lot. For example, let's say this Devouring Eel is attacking this King's Hand, which only has 1 undamaged asset left on it. The Devouring Eel uses Constrict with the Consume trigger, and on the Penetration flip gets enough to do 1 damage. Since you resolve the action's text fully first, the King's Hand flips over its asset to soak that 1 damage. Then you resolve the trigger, doing 1 separate damage, which destroys the asset. This isn't always a good thing, though. If one Devouring Eel was attacking another, for example, the defender could spend a reinforcement token to block 1 damage from the attack, and then another token to block 1 damage from the trigger. When they flip to glory, they get another ability, and this is huge. Split in 2 lets them spend 3 reinforcement tokens when they activate to summon in a brand new Devouring Eel. Like with the Alpha Crawler, this makes these into really scary units if they're given some support. And with that, we're done part 1 of the Gibbering Hordes. As you can tell, there's some really wild interactions going on, and there's still more than half of their units to cover, plus their stratagems. Until next time, happy gaming!